Hello, everyone. If you could just give us one moment to get our cameras started. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. If this is your first time with us, welcome to another episode of Cooking Connected. So joining me today is Sajwa and Julia. My name is Jordan. So both myself and Sajwa are with the Cooking Matters Minnesota program. We are both program coordinators with the University of Minnesota Extension. Also joining us today is one of our Cooking Matters volunteers, Julia.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone. So normally a Cooking Matters class is a nutrition-based 6-week cooking class that meets once a week for 2 hours. Classes normally feature a chef and a nutrition educator that work together to teach our participants how to make a healthy, delicious, affordable meal. So today we're going to follow that same format. We are going to be making a vegan sloppy joe. We would like to thank the creator of this recipe, that is the Minimalist Baker with theminimalistbaker.com. Julia will be our chef and Sajwa will be our nutrition educator. And just like every week, we do have another survey for you all to take. So if you do have a chance after this video, please take our survey. It just helps us make our videos a little bit better every time and to help us continue our work in the community. So please take our survey. That is posted in the description of our videos as well as in the live chat. For this survey, you will need a program code. This week's program code I have right here. It is E097934. And again, it's in the live chat as well as in the description box. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Sajwa for today's recipe. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you, Jordan, for the introduction there. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Like Jordan said, we are going to be doing a vegan sloppy joe recipe this week. So this is going to be a fun one, and we got Julia here to prepare that. So why don't we go ahead and get started?
Perfect. All right, so I really like this recipe. I am vegetarian, if anyone didn't know by now. And so I haven't had a real sloppy joe in probably 12 years-ish. And this isn't going to taste exactly like a regular sloppy joe, of course, because we're not using meat, but it gives you sloppy joe vibes. So if you really are craving that, but you want to keep it meatless, maybe on the lighter side, then this is a really good way to do that. So the first thing we always want to do in the kitchen is to wash our hands. So that's going to be 20 seconds, getting in between the fingers, around the thumbs, get around the wrists. And I've already done that, so I am set on that. The next thing we want to do is to clean our workspace. So I clean all of the visible debris off and then go over and sanitize everything to make sure it's nice and clean. We're not going to get anything contaminating our food. So I've already done that. I've rinsed my veggies off. And so now I'm ready to get started. So I'm going to change this a little bit so you can kind of see what I'm doing here. And then I've got my chef's view up above too. So we're going to start with our aromatic vegetables. And so for this recipe, we've got onions, garlic, and a bell pepper. And we're just going to start sauteing that off. So first, I'm going to do the onion. And this one I had half an onion left over from a different project. I didn't want to waste it. So of course, I'm going to use it again. This is an exceptionally large onion. So the recipe calls for half of an onion, but I think I'm going to even go for half of this chunk because, like I said, it's pretty giant. So when I get started, I'm just going to peel the top couple of layers off. Save that for my broth bag.
Oh, yeah.
And then when I start, we need to make sure to practice good knife handling skills. So what I'm going to do is pinch the blade between my thumb and forefinger, and then wrap the rest of my fingers around the handle. And that just gives you really good control. Doesn't feel like your knife is flailing everywhere. So I'm going to get started with that. And a super good way to chop an onion quickly is to just make lines down it like this. And as I said, I'm only going to use half of this thing, so I'm only going halfway down. Otherwise, you can go all the way in. I'm just going to get these cut here. And then I'm going to take my claw to make sure that I'm not cutting any fingertips or fingernails off. And then I'm just going to go straight down here and get a nice dice or a nice chop on this. All right, so I think that's probably going to be enough onion. So I'm going to get my stove warmed up. It takes a minute with mine. I'm just going to use, this is just some cooking spray. So I'm just going to get that in there. And this is the pump one I like instead of the aerosol version, but that's personal preference. You do you, whatever you're used to.
And if you didn't like to use
I'm going to get the onion in.
You could also just pour a little bit of a drizzle in there. I like to use one with a drizzle spout, which kind of helps me control my pour.
Yeah.
Where I'm oiling up my pan.
Perfect. Yeah, that's really good too. All right, so I'm onto my garlic. I'm just going to break off a couple of cloves here. This calls for 2 cloves. I'm just removing the extra papers from this. And then to get the rest of the peel off, we're going to do our neat little trick to crush it first. So I'm going to put my knife down with the blade facing away from me. Put my heel of my hand on there and give it a nice smush. I'll do that with this one too.
And if you guys had like maybe a smaller cutting board or some other like firm flat object, you could also use that to do the push down if you weren't comfortable using your knife. So keep that in mind too.
Definitely. All right, so I'm just going to get the skins off here. This one's being a little stubborn.
Yeah, sometimes they can get like that or they want to run away from you. I've had that happen.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so I'm just going to cut off the little end here. You don't need that part. I apologize in advance if you hear my cats chasing each other around back there. They're just having a good time today. All right, so I'm using my claw hand again, and I'm just starting off slicing this, just getting it into smaller chunks. And with this kind of knife, this is a chef's knife, and I like to use a rocking motion with that. It seems to give me a lot of control. It's going to be harder to do that kind of motion, of course, if you have a flat knife. This one is kind of designed to do that with the roundy blade. So I'm just going to go through and give this a chop. I am just scooping all my pieces up every now and then to give me a nice little pile again, so I'm not chasing it all over the cutting board. And you can see in this garlic, there's a little bit of green in it. That's just the garlic starting to grow in there. That's totally fine. You can eat that. Don't be afraid of it.
Yeah, I've seen that happen in onions too, and I go ahead and use it. Why not?
Yeah. No reason to throw this away or to waste that.
We did have a comment from one of our viewers. She says that her kids use the bottom of a glass. So if you're getting kids in the kitchen to smush that garlic, they can use the bottom of a glass.
Oh, that's perfect.
That's an awesome tip.
All right, so I'm just giving this a stir. And this is my lovely cast iron pan, by the way. I really enjoy using this. It's nice and heavy. It has a really good heat conduction on it, so the whole pan gets hot instead of just one spot of it. So that's super nice. And if you happen to be deficient in iron, cooking in a cast iron pan actually can help that because it kind of infuses your food with extra iron. It's pretty neat.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So now I'm going on to the pepper. We only need half of this guy.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and cut down on the lobes just to kind of get those chopped off. I'm just going to do probably 2 of them. And now I'm just going to slice the ribs out, being very careful, of course. Cut away from yourself. And I just knock the seeds out of it like that. And again, there's nothing wrong with the seeds. They're not spicy in a pepper like this. So don't feel like if you don't get them all out, it's going to be way too spicy for you. Bell peppers are a pretty tame pepper, so it's not really going to affect the spiciness of it. All right, so then with this, my plan of action here is I'm going to slice into strips, and then I'll turn the strips sideways and get those into a nice little chop. So here I go with my claw hand again.
So while Julia's working through her bell pepper, I think I'm going to take a moment and maybe talk a little bit about the origins of Sloppy Joe and kind of where that comes from. So on the minimalistbaker.com, I was looking through our recipe and looking forward to going through it. And I saw that they had a little bit about the history of Sloppy Joe. And so origins of the dish aren't exactly clear, but it's definitely considered to be an American classic, right up there with like hot dogs and hamburgers. It's kind of a classic American dish we have all the time. The term like Sloppy Joe sandwich is connected to loose meat sandwiches popular in Sioux City, Iowa. Many believe the sandwich originated in the 1930s by a Sioux City, Iowa chef named Joe. So that's probably where the Sloppy Joe comes from there.
That makes sense.
But others also say that the sandwich may have originated from Havana, Cuba. And that would be by a chef named Jose Garcia. And they think it was a modification to a popular Cuban dish called ropa vieja, which means old clothes in Spanish. And although it means old clothes, it certainly doesn't taste like old clothes. It's just kind of a shredded or pulled beef dish. So that's kind of where people are thinking that this dish came from. So it's always really cool to learn the origins and the history of all these popular dishes that we eat commonly today. A very fun thing to research when you're trying out something new.
That's really interesting. I never thought about that. Okay, so I added my pepper to the pan. I'm just stirring it around. I did turn the heat down a little bit. I had it a little too high, so now I'm on gentle medium, I'll say. One thing you need to watch with if you are going to use a cast iron pan is that it all gets hot. So, you know, it's normal for us to just grab the handle of our pots and pans, but with this one, you actually have to be real careful because, you know, like I said, the whole bottom of the pan gets hot instead of just one spot. That extends out to the handles too. So just keep that in mind if you're going to use a cast iron pan. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about while that cooks away a little bit is the lentils. So lentils are going to be the main part of this dish, the meaty part, if you will. And lentils are great. It's a very good vegetarian source of protein. So this is what lentils look like. I'll show you up here. They're they're legumes. So they're related to beans, but it's not technically a bean. So what I normally do with lentils, these are dried. I've heard you can get them canned, but I've never actually seen that. So I always do use the dried kind. So what you want to do with these, I just dump them in a strainer and you want to go through them. So it's, you know, lentils are a natural product. And so even with the highest quality machinery and everything like that, sometimes they're going to sneak in a little stone or a little stick or something. So I like to just dump them in here, shake it around a little bit and look for anything that doesn't belong. The next thing is to rinse them off. And that's just to wash away any dust or any debris that's still hanging on there. This recipe, it calls for 1 cup of lentils. So that's this amount. And this is going to make 4 servings. And it wants you to use 2 cups of water, but it suggests actually using half vegetable broth and half water. And that's just to infuse a little bit more flavor into them. So it kind of gives us a head start on our great sloppy joes when you start with something really flavorful. So the lentils can take, 20, 25 minutes to cook. So I've actually already gone ahead and cooked mine that I'm going to use for this recipe. So I'm just going to save these for the next time I'm using lentils, which is probably not going to be too long. All right, so this just needs to go for a couple more minutes here.
Okay, so an option like this, oh, I can see your little kitty down there.
Oh,
but
you see him?
yeah, stopping by to say hi.
Yeah.
But an option like a vegan sloppy joe is really great, especially if you have a plant-based diet. It's a great way to modify popular dishes and make them work with your diet. So I just want to talk a little bit about getting the best nutrition on a plant-based diet. But before we get into those details, why don't we talk a little bit about the different kinds of plant-based diets? Do you have a moment here, Julia, or do you need to move forward?
I'm just gonna throw in my spice here.
Okay. All right.
And
so
then I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, yeah.
So,
just holler when you want me to pause.
all right, perfect. So this we have chili powder, ground cumin, and a little bit of paprika. So I'm just gonna toss all of this in here. I like to put it in. I'm also gonna be adding some tomato sauce for, the sauciness of the sloppy part of the sloppy joe. But I do just like to give it a head start in the pan without that, because it can toast the spices a little bit and add a lot of flavors. So if you've ever toasted nuts before, it's a similar idea where it just kind of the flavors really come out. So that's all it needs. And then I have here some no salt added tomato sauce. And that's really great because, that way we can control how much sodium is in it and how we want it to taste. So I've wiped off the top of my can, which is always just a good practice to get into. Make sure there's nothing gross, because when you punch down with your can opener, you're bringing any bacteria or anything that's on top of the can into it. And obviously we don't want to do that. So I'm just going to dump this in. Turn the heat down. I'm going down to the low here. I'm going to scrape all this out. All right, and then the next thing I'm gonna add, I'm almost ready for you to take over again, Sajwa. Don't worry, I didn't forget about you.
No worries.
I'm gonna throw some Worcestershire sauce in. And this is one thing that a lot of people don't think of, but if you are making this recipe totally vegan or you're serving it to vegan friends or anything, you have to watch out for the kind of Worcestershire that you get. Because sometimes if you look on the back, it lists natural flavorings that can contain some fish sauce. And so for my level of vegetarianism, I don't really care about that. So I don't like the taste of meat, and it doesn't taste like fish. So I'm okay with that. So what I'm gonna do is just add, it says 1 to 2 tablespoons. So I'm just gonna split the difference and put in 1.5. All right, your turn.
Okay. So, Julia was talking a little bit about her plant-based diet, and I was going to go ahead and cover some of the other options that are out there and available. Some you may have heard, some you haven't. So the first one I want to talk about is the Lacto-Vegetarian Diet. And this is a diet that excludes meat, fish, poultry, and eggs, as well as foods that contain them. But dairy products like milk, cheese, yogurt, and butter are okay. The other one is ovo-vegetarian, and this diet excludes meat, poultry, seafood, and other dairy products, but it does allow eggs. Then we have lacto-ovo-vegetarian. This one excludes meat, fish, poultry, but allows dairy products and eggs. We have pescatarian. This excludes meat, poultry, dairy, and eggs, but allows fish. And then finally, we have a vegan diet. And this one excludes meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and dairy products, and foods that contain these products. So that's kind of pointing to what Julia was talking about there with the sauce she's using. If it has some of those natural flavorings, it might have trace amounts of any animal products, and that wouldn't be okay with the vegan diet.
Exactly.
So Are you, did I jump
Go
over
ahead, go
you?
ahead. I'm just letting this heat up,
Okay.
kind of blend the flavors all together.
You guys know how we do with Cooking Connected. We're jumping on each other's toes all the time. So if you are considering, having a plant-based diet, you do want to make sure that you watch for some of these key vitamins and nutrients. The first one I want to talk about is calcium, which helps build and maintain strong teeth and bones. And yes, dairy and milk foods are high in calcium, but you can also find calcium in dark green vegetables like turnips, collard greens, kale, broccoli. All of those are good plant sources if you eat enough of them, and they're good sources for calcium. You can also look for calcium enriched or fortified products, meaning they've added in or put it in there for you. And you can find that usually you'll see those words on juices, cereals, maybe like soy products, tofu, those kind of things. You also want to make sure that you're including vitamin D. Calcium and vitamin D work together with bone health. Vitamin D is added to cow's milk and some soy and rice milks. You might also find it in cereals and margarines. You want to make sure you check your food labels for these items. But if you're not eating enough fortified foods, or you live in an area that has limited sun exposure like Minnesota, you may want to go ahead and include a vitamin D supplement into your diet. And again, that would be good for whether you're a plant-based diet or not. But if you are using a plant-based diet, you might want to consider one that's derived from plants. The next vitamin I want to talk about is vitamin B12. And this vitamin is necessary to produce red blood cells in the body and also prevent anemia. And it's found almost exclusively in animal products, so it can be difficult to get to get B12 in a vegan diet. So you do want to make sure that you are maybe taking a supplement or looking for vitamin enriched cereals, fortified products, things like that. Keep that in mind. And it can go undetected sometimes because it is masked by another vitamin called folate. So the deficiency in B12 may be masked, but make sure that you're keeping up and watching out for those vitamins in your diet. Another thing that I oftentimes hear about is, with these diets, you're not getting the animal products or you're not having meat and chicken and such. So protein is a big one, and protein helps us maintain healthy skin, bones, muscles, and organs. Eggs, dairy, and, meat are good sources of this, but you don't need to have those in your diet. They're not the only protein sources out there. You can definitely get sufficient protein from plant-based foods, especially if you eat a variety of them throughout the day. So things like soy products, legumes, lentils, nuts, seeds, whole grains, all of those have protein. I also wanted to talk about iron. This is, again, another crucial one with red blood cells. You can find iron in dried beans, lentils, enriched cereals, dark leafy greens, and vegetables, as well as dried fruit. So please keep that in mind. So if you are looking to absorb more iron into your diet, make sure you're also having vitamin C. So strawberries, citrus fruits, tomatoes, cabbage, and broccoli. As you might have already picked up on, there are a lot of vitamins and minerals that are double dippers. So you can find a lot of them in similar products. So like broccoli, you'll find iron and you'll find that calcium. So keep that in mind when you're planning your diet. We also want to watch out for zinc. This is a component of many enzymes and plays a role in cell division in the body. And it also forms proteins. So you want to make sure that you're getting sources like whole grains, soy products, legumes, nuts, wheat germ. All of that would be great options to get great plant-based options for zinc. And then finally, I know I've been going through a lot of things, but iodine. This is a component in thyroid hormones. It regulates metabolism and growth, and it helps with key organs. You want to make sure you are getting iodine into your diet. So things like soybeans, vegetables like sweet potatoes and such would be great to add. Also, we do like to talk about watching our sodium. But when you are using salt, you could choose an iodized salt. And that's one way to help include more iodine into your diet.
Those are all super great things to keep in mind. And like you said, there's a lot of vitamins that are harder to get on a vegetarian diet. And so I actually take a multivitamin every day just to make sure I'm good.
Just to cover your bases.
Yep, vitamin D. There's iron in it. And again, with my cast iron pan. All right, so I think this is ready. Just let those flavors get to know each other a little bit. And now these are my cooked lentils. So it's really hard to see with this lighting, but this is what they're gonna look like when they're cooked. So I'll show it over here too.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're all ready to go. So I'm just gonna scoop all my lentils into here. And like I said before, this is 1 cup only from dry. But you can see how much it makes when it's all cooked. And it absorbed almost all of the liquid that I had in there, that water mixed with vegetable broth. So I'm just gonna try to leave a little bit of that excess behind just so that I can gauge how much I actually need. I wouldn't wanna dump it all in and then end up having watery sloppy joes. So I'll save it in case I need that. But for now, we'll see what this is looking like.
One of our viewers did comment, I have a nice comment here. You may not need as much protein as you think, so it makes it a lot easier to get the necessary amount from plant-based. So we're seeing some protein here.
That is a great point. I feel, I've heard a lot of us, we overeat, the meat. We have big, huge servings of meat with every meal, and that's really not necessary. And definitely you don't have to just do meat either. I love incorporating more vegetables and such, beans, legumes, nuts, and seeds as snacks, as substitutes, and they save a lot of money. Meat can be a little expensive.
That's one of the things I love about this. I never have to pay for that.
Yeah.
All right, so I think this is looking pretty good. It's definitely still sloppy, but I'm glad that I kept back a little bit of that extra liquid. You can, if you find that it is a little bit too liquidy for your taste, you can always cook it down. If you see the steam coming off of this, that's extra moisture. So the longer you cook it, the thicker it's going to get when it releases that steam. So this is it. This is our sloppy joe.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So what I like to do,
even tell the difference.
You always want to taste it to see what it needs. I know at least here in Minnesota, some people like to put mustard in or on top. So that's always an option. I didn't put any salt in yet, so that's probably going to need to happen. I'll give it a taste and see what it needs and how I need to adjust it. And this recipe also calls for a little bit of sugar. I find that I don't usually feel like it's necessary, but the sugar is in there just to kind of cut the acidity of the tomatoes. So if it's a little too tart, a little too tangy, a little too acidic for you, then feel free to sprinkle in just a little bit of sugar.
We have a couple of questions from our viewers here. One says, that was fast. How long did the lentils cook?
It took about 20-25 minutes for the lentils to cook. And so you definitely can do it at the same time as this. I just didn't want to run over our time for this little demonstration. So that's why I cooked them in advance.
All right. And then there was another question here. I have trouble with tomato sauce being too acidic sometimes. Can I add something to help with that?
Yep. And that would be the sugar.
Great. Thank you. All right.
Absolutely. So all I have left to do with this is to put it on some buns. I have whole wheat buns today. Let me see if I can. So this is another way to get whole grains.
Oh yeah.
And these are nice and squishy still. They're really soft. So you know, I don't think anybody would feel like this is detracting from the Sloppy Joe experience.
So far, if we put the sloppy joe on the bun, we've got our lentils giving us a lot of protein there. We've technically got fruit coming in with the tomatoes. I know, but technically. We've got vegetables with the bell pepper, the garlic, the onion. We've got whole grains with our buns. What else am I missing?
We'll have some of the vegetables. Did you hit that yet?
Yes, I did cover the vegetables and the dairy. And you know what I mean? Depending on the plant-based diet you're on, you could certainly do something on the side, maybe a slice of cheese, a cup of, you know, milk, whatever works for you in your diet. But yeah, that's a pretty complete my plate, I'd say.
I think so too.
Yeah.
There we go. Finished Sloppy Joe.
Wonderful.
All right. We do have one more question from our viewer. Can you freeze the cooked lentils or when it's finished?
Absolutely. Either one. I actually like to cook a big batch of lentils all at once. And then you can keep it in the freezer for, you know, a long time.
Yeah. Awesome. That is a great menu planning tip. So if you make this recipe ahead of time, you can freeze it. So another great part about this recipe. So thank you so much, Julia and Sajua, for today's demonstration and that awesome nutrition education. We just would like to thank again the Minimalist Baker with the minimalistbaker.com for this beautiful recipe today. Finally, please don't forget to take our survey at the end of the video here. It is in the description box as well as in the live chat. So if you have a few minutes, please take our survey. So here's that program code one more time. It is E097934. So please take our survey. Last thing, don't forget to join us again next week. Thursday at 2 p.m. Every Thursday we'll be here with a new recipe. If you have any suggestions for new recipes, please comment. Send us a message on Facebook. We love new recipes. Just getting some more comments here. So thank you so much for joining us today. We will hopefully see you again next week. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.